Welcome to another episode of the Crime Decoder, with another story, another truth to discover. A quiet college town in Oregon, Brooke Wilberger, a bright, kind-hearted 19-year-old, vanishes in broad daylight. No scream, no sign of struggle, just gone. But behind this disappearance lies a dark truth, one that would take years, multiple states, and unthinkable persistence to uncover. Tonight on the Crime Decoder, we bring you a tragic case that stunned the nation. Who killed Brooke Wilberger? Shocking truth finally revealed. It was May 24th, 2004, a quiet Monday morning in the serene college town of Corvallis, Oregon. The sun rose like any other day, but before the clock struck noon, a tragedy would begin unfolding that would shake this peaceful community to its core. 19-year-old Brooke Wilberger, a bright, compassionate sophomore home for summer break, had plans that day. Small plans. She was going to help her sister Stephanie clean the light posts at the Oak Park apartments. Nothing unusual. Just another errand. A sisterly favor. Brooke was wearing flip-flops, casual clothes. She didn't take her purse. She didn't take her phone. She didn't even wear makeup. It was supposed to be a short, uneventful morning. But at some point between 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., Brooke Wilberger vanished into thin air. Brooke was the youngest of 6 children. Raised in a tight-knit Mormon household in Veneta, Oregon, she was known for her kindness, her innocence, and her unwavering faith. She didn't drink. She didn't party. Her dreams were modest. Her heart was pure. She was enrolled at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, and had just returned to Oregon for summer vacation. Her, Justin Blake, also attended BYU. They were planning their future together. That morning, she spoke with him on the phone. Everything seemed normal. But in the hours that followed, nothing would ever be normal. Again. Brooke had started cleaning the lampposts with her sister, but at one point, Stephanie left the area briefly. When she returned, Brooke was gone. Her flip-flops were still there, her cleaning supplies. Nothing was taken. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no evidence. But something felt very wrong. Stephanie began calling Brooke's name. She checked the nearby buildings. Then the panic set in. Within hours, the Wilberger family notified local police. But this was 2004, long before smartphones, instant alerts, or social media blasts. The process was slower, more terrifying. Law enforcement responded quickly, but they too were puzzled. There were no witnesses. No one had seen Brooke leave. No vehicle had been reported. It was as if she had been swallowed whole by the earth. Word spread fast through Corvallis. Flyers were printed by the hundreds. Local media picked up the story, and soon volunteers began arriving to help. The search quickly expanded, by foot, by horse, with helicopters, canines. Hundreds scoured the wooded areas, the nearby Willamette River, even drain pipes and culverts. They weren't just searching, they were praying. As days turned into nights, and nights into weeks, the case began making national headlines. News stations from across the region arrived. The FBI got involved. Speculation grew. Is this a random abduction? A stalker? Or had someone been watching Brooke for days, waiting for the right moment to strike? Initially, authorities explored several possibilities. Was it someone from the apartment complex? A delivery driver? A transient? Early leads included a suspicious man reportedly seen loitering in the area days before. But nothing stuck. Meanwhile, the Wilberger family held on to hope. Brooke's parents, Cammie and Greg, made tearful public pleas for help. Her Justin flew in from Utah and stood by the family's side. But as summer wore on and no new evidence emerged, the gut-wrenching reality set in. Brooke was not coming home. Communities across Oregon rallied together. Brooke's disappearance struck a chord, not just because she was young and innocent, but because she reminded people of their own daughters, their own sisters, their own students. National outlets began comparing her case to other high-profile disappearances, Natalie Holloway, Elizabeth Smart. But unlike those cases, Brooke had left behind almost no trace. By the end of summer 2004, 3 months after she vanished, the active search slowed. Police still worked the case. But without a suspect, a witness, or evidence, momentum faded. Still, Brooke's family never gave up. They continued organizing prayer events, search efforts, and speaking to the media. They were determined to keep Brooke's face, her name alive in the public eye. Every year they honored her birthday. Every May they gathered at Oak Park. Hope flickered, however faint. But they didn't know that the man who took Brooke had already moved on. And soon he'd strike again. The first 48 hours in a missing persons case are everything. The clock isn't just ticking, it's screaming. Every minute lost can be a step further from the truth. With Brooke gone and no sign of where or who could have taken her, investigators with the Corvallis Police Department launched a wide-scale operation. Their top priority: find Brooke. But quickly beneath that priority, a darker reality set in. It might also be hunting a predator. They began where logic said to start, those closest to her. Brooke S. Justin Blake was in Utah at the time. Still, investigators had to rule him out. Next, they turned their focus to a maintenance worker employed at the Oak Park Apartments. He had been working in the area that day and had direct access to the complex. We spoke to him extensively. Nothing came up. His story checked out. Had no criminal record, no inconsistencies. But we still couldn't shake the feeling something or someone was being missed. Tips began pouring in. Residents recalled seeing a green or teal van parked near the apartments. Some described a white male, late 20s to early 40s, loitering by the complex days prior, but descriptions varied. Sketch artists could only do so much with fragments. As investigators chased every possible direction, they faced another problem. Too many leads, but no evidence. No eyewitnesses had seen Brooke being taken. No one heard a scream. And no forensic trace. No blood. No fingerprints. No surveillance footage was found. Detectives expanded the search to include registered sex offenders in the surrounding counties. They interviewed drifters, former tenants, even long-haul truck drivers passing through Corvallis that day. And yet every promising lead led to another dead end. The Wilberger family, now at the center of a media storm, remained composed. But behind closed doors, the cracks of helplessness deepened. Public vigils continued. Local churches gathered in prayer. Volunteers still combed through brush and ravines. But with no signs of Brooke, the media's focus began to shift. The community's hope began to dim. And so, as summer rolled into fall, the Corvallis Police Department, despite having invested thousands of man-hours and federal resources, found themselves at an impossible crossroad. Officially, the Wilberger case was still active, but unofficially, it had gone cold. Investigators never stopped reviewing files. They rechecked alibis. They reopened case notes late into the night, but there was simply nothing, not even a whisper. To outsiders, it looked like the system had failed. But then out of nowhere, something happened over 1,000 miles away that changed everything. November 2004, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Nearly 6 months have passed since Brooke Wilberger vanished. 1,200 miles away, another nightmare is about to unfold, but this time, there's a survivor. A 22-year-old University of New Mexico student named Katie is walking to her car after class. It's broad daylight. There are people nearby, but that doesn't stop him. A man grabs her, forces her into a van, ties her hands, gags her, drives off. Reenactment footage blurred woman's silhouette in distress. Interior shots of a van, blurred face. She's terrified. But she doesn't give up. Hours later, she makes a desperate move. She leaps from the van as it slows near a gas station. She's injured, but she runs. And lives. And that description? It led them straight to a man named Joel Patrick Courtney. Joel Patrick Courtney was arrested the same day. Police impounded his van. What they found inside sent chills through the most hardened detectives. Its zip ties, bleach, gloves, wipes. A travel bag with spare clothing. The van wasn't just transportation, it was a mobile assault chamber. A predator's workshop. And among the evidence was something else. A broken pair of flip-flops, similar to the ones Brooke Wilberger had left behind. Police dug into Courtney's background and discovered he was no stranger to violence. Courtney had a disturbing history. Born and raised in Beaverton, Oregon, he'd bounced between jobs and towns. His rap sheet included assault, attempted rape, and drug possession. He had served time. But like many repeat offenders, he had slipped through the cracks. Investigators soon discovered that in May 2004, Joel Courtney had returned to Oregon. He had friends in the Corvallis area. He'd lived there before. He knew the terrain. When detectives in Oregon were notified of Courtney's arrest, their reaction was immediate. The FBI joined forces with local law enforcement. They tracked Courtney's cell phone records, credit card use, and witness sightings. On May 24, 2004, the very day Brooke vanished, Courtney was confirmed to be in Corvallis, Oregon, not just in the city, near the Oak Park apartments. The flip-flops in his van didn't yield usable DNA. The bleach had destroyed any trace. But the profile was tightening, and this wasn't the first time he'd done this. Authorities believed Courtney was escalating and fast. With Courtney now in custody in New Mexico for the abduction of Katie, Oregon investigators took their time. They began compiling a case file against him. But instead of rushing charges, they chose a different tactic. Wait him out. Meanwhile, Courtney sat in jail, stewing. He refused to cooperate, refused to speak of Oregon, refused to acknowledge Brooke. But outside his cell, police, prosecutors, and FBI agents continued to build a timeline so airtight it would eventually leave him no room to breathe. The arrest of Joel Courtney breathed new life into Brooke's case. Media outlets picked up the story. Again, for the Wilberger family, it was a devastating glimmer of hope. After months of silence, they had something. Someone. Public support surged once more. Candlelight vigils resumed. Thousands signed petitions asking for justice. The case was no longer just an Oregon tragedy, it was now a national reckoning. Despite everything, the physical evidence, the timeline, the profile, Joel Courtney, could not be charged for Brooke's murder. Not yet. And so, law enforcement across state lines continued their methodical watch, hoping, waiting, knowing that one day the monster would speak. And finally he did. Years later, when the walls closed in and death stared him in the face, Joel Courtney broke his silence. Joel Patrick Courtney, a name now forever tied to the tragedy that shook Oregon. But who was he before he became the prime suspect in the abduction and murder of Brooke Wilberger? Was he a man pushed by impulse, broken mind, something far more chilling, a remorseless predator who had refined the art of hiding in plain sight? Born in 1967 in Beaverton, Oregon, Joel Courtney grew up in what some would call a fractured household. Not much is publicly documented about his early childhood, but what is known paints the picture of a troubled young man. Courtney reportedly struggled with school, authority, and relationships. In his teens, he was known to drift school to school, job to job, a loner. And over time, something inside him began to rot. Joel's criminal record didn't explode overnight. It escalated slowly. A DUI. Disorderly conduct. But in the late 1990s, things turned dark. He was arrested for assaulting a woman in Portland, later charged in connection with attempted sexual assault. The victim survived, but the pattern was unmistakable. And that's how predators like Joel survive. They float beneath the surface until one day, someone doesn't come back. Joel Courtney had a dark gift. He could seem normal. He wasn't the caricature of a monster. He held jobs. He dated women. Even volunteered at events. But behind the mask, he was studying. Watching. Waiting. That ability to hide in plain sight made him deadly. It meant people didn't suspect him until it was too late. Experts believe Joel Courtney didn't just commit crimes. When he was caught, he practiced, refined, evolved. He had a pattern. He often targeted young, petite, college-aged women. He struck during daylight hours where victims would least expect danger. His tools? Bleach gloves, zip-tees, wipes prepped, portable, disposable. Brooke Wilberger tragically fit the profile: faithful, trusting, soft-spoken, and alone for just a moment. Joel Courtney didn't know Brooke. They had never spoken. He had no grudge, no vendetta. But on that Monday morning, as she helped her sister clean light posts, she crossed paths with a ticking time bomb. The randomness is what makes it more terrifying. She didn't choose to walk into danger. It was already there. When investigators looked inside Courtney's van, they found a horror kit. ZIP ties, duct tape, gloves, industrial wipes, and multiple pairs of clothing. Everything about Joel's crime scenes pointed to one terrifying conclusion: this man prepared for murder, and prepared to leave no trace. Courtney's precision showed law enforcement. They weren't dealing with a man who made mistakes. They were dealing with a man who made decisions. Even as investigators in Oregon connected the dots, his presence in Corvallis, the matching van, the victimology. They couldn't yet charge him for Brooke's murder. No body, no DNA, no confession. Nothing the court would deem concrete. Oregon's investigators knew that Courtney, arrogant and cunning, would one day speak. And when he did, it would be their chance. While he sat behind bars in New Mexico for the kidnapping of Katie, experts began profiling Joel Patrick Courtney. They interviewed former partners, examined his writings, reviewed his interviews. He refused all discussion of Brooke, repeatedly denied involvement, but he never sounded convincing. He never sounded innocent. Behind closed doors, the FBI discussed what they feared, that there may be other victims, unnamed, unfound, forgotten. Law enforcement worked quietly. They knew rushing would mean failure, so they applied pressure in the background, revisiting witnesses, building timelines, finding forensic paths others had missed. And then, one day after nearly 5 years, something changed. Joel Courtney, facing life behind bars in New Mexico and possible extradition to Oregon, made an offer. He would talk. But only under one condition. It had been 5 long years since Brooke Wilberger vanished without a trace. 5 birthdays. 5 Christmases. 5 years of unanswered prayers. But in 2009, something shifted. Behind the walls of a prison cell in New Mexico, a deal was being made. And it would bring a terrifying truth into the light. From 2004 to 2009, Joel Patrick Courtney said nothing. About Brooke, about Oregon, about the green van. Denied it all. Flatly, repeatedly. Prosecutors in Oregon had waited, watched, planned. But they knew one thing: without a confession or body, a conviction would be near impossible. Meanwhile, Courtney had been sentenced in New Mexico to 18 years for the brutal abduction and assault of Katie. But Oregon wanted him too for murder. That leverage came in the form of a quiet deal, a deal that would change everything. In 2009, Oregon prosecutors made Joel Courtney an offer. If he revealed where Brooke's body was and confessed to everything, they would remove the death penalty from the table. Joel accepted. Not out of remorse, not to give closure, but to save his own life. What followed was one of the most haunting interviews in Oregon criminal history. In cold, emotionless detail, Joel Courtney laid out the truth. On May 24, 2004, he spotted Brooke Wilberger outside the Oak Park apartments. He didn't know her, hadn't planned anything. She was simply there, alone, vulnerable. He approached her, forced her into his van, drove west, assaulted her. When he was done, he killed her. Courtney admitted to dumping Brooke's body in the rugged woods near Blodgett, a remote, heavily forested area in the Coast Range, about 25 miles from Corvallis. Then, in the final moment of his confession, he drew a map. Following the directions from Courtney's confession, FBI agents and search teams trekked into the dense, mossy wilderness of Blodgett. GPS guided them deep into a secluded ravine, and they're covered in brush. Scattered by time, they found what they had feared and prayed for in equal measure: human remains. Brooke's remains. The Wilberger family was notified. Immediately. After 5 years of agony, they would finally get to bury their daughter. Brooke's funeral was held in June 2009. Her casket, white and adorned with lilies, was carried by her brothers and laid to rest in Veneta, Oregon. It wasn't the ending they wanted, but it was the ending they needed. In exchange for his confession, Joel Courtney was extradited to Oregon and formally charged with aggravated murder, kidnapping, rape, and sexual abuse. After 5 long years of unanswered questions, heartbreak, hope stretched to its breaking point, justice finally arrived. But it came not with a bang, but with a signature. In 2009, Joel Patrick Courtney entered a courtroom in New Mexico and changed his plea to guilty for the violent kidnapping and sexual assault of a young university student, Katie. For that crime, he received 18 years in prison. But Oregon was waiting. Within weeks, Courtney was extradited back to Benton County, Oregon, where prosecutors had prepared a rock-solid case. Courtney waived his right to a jury. He stood in front of the judge and pled guilty to 6 counts, including aggravated murder, kidnapping, rape, and abuse of a corpse. And in that moment, a single sentence sealed his fate. Joel Patrick Courtney was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He would spend the rest of his life inside a concrete box, stripped of freedom, forever caged. But for the Wilberger family, justice wasn't relief. It was reality. Final confirmation that their daughter was never coming home. The courtroom was quiet the day of sentencing. No angry outbursts, no long speeches, no, just the echo of a name that would never fade from this community's heart. Brooke Carol Wilberger. For 5 years, the Wilbergers had lived in limbo. Now they had a verdict. But they also had the full weight of grief. The trial didn't just expose a killer. It revealed the resilience of a family who refused to surrender to despair. In Corvallis, Brooke's memory became a symbol of unity. Within days of the sentencing, the town gathered once more for a candlelight vigil. Hundreds stood in silence, holding candles that flickered in the Oregon breeze. They shared stories. They wept. They prayed. Children left flowers. College students wrote messages. Parents held their children a little closer that night. After the sentencing, the Wilbergers created a foundation in Brooke's name, a scholarship fund to support young women in higher education. The goal? To honor the life Brooke was meant to live. Each year, a new student receives support carrying Brooke's spirit into the future. The legacy of a girl taken too soon is now helping others rise. Though a full trial was avoided, legal teams and investigators carried emotional scars. Many had prepared for months, mentally, emotionally, legally, for the courtroom showdown that never came. For detectives who worked the case since 2004, the sentencing marked both closure and a beginning. Many would go on to advocate for change in how missing person cases are handled. Back at home, the Wilbergers had their first Christmas with closure. Brooke's seat at the table remained empty, but her presence was everywhere. Her mother still lit a candle each morning. Her father still walked the trail where search parties once roamed. Joel Courtney now resides in the Oregon State Penitentiary, one of the most secure prisons in the Pacific Northwest. He receives no visitors, no privileges, no hope of release. He lives in the shadows of a system he tried to outsmart. And so, the man who once evaded justice now serves it. Day by day, year by year. Forgotten, justice isn't perfect. It doesn't erase pain. But for the Wilbergers, and for Oregon, it was something real. Something final. The courtroom is silent. Now, the evidence filed. The candles have long burned out, but Brooke's name, it endures. She was never just a victim. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend. And even now, years later, she remains a light in the darkest corners of tragedy. In May 2004, Brooke Wilberger disappeared from a quiet college town in Oregon. At first, it was a local tragedy, another missing person story. But soon, it would capture the attention of an entire nation. As days turned to weeks with no sign of Brooke, the search gained traction. Volunteers poured in. Billboards were raised. Media outlets began reporting daily updates. National news outlets spotlighted the case. Soon, Dateline NBC aired a full special. America's Most Wanted profiled her disappearance multiple times. And the pressure on law enforcement only intensified. But behind every headline was a grieving family, holding on to faith in each other. The Wilberger family faced an agonizing dilemma: remain private, or use the media to keep Brooke's face alive in the public eye. They agreed to interviews, held press conferences, allowed cameras into their pain, not for attention, but to amplify the search. They stayed dignified, steadfast, and anchored in faith. Even when headlines became invasive or speculation cruel, they never lashed out. Years later, Brooke's case would be re-examined on multiple true crime programs: 48 Hours, Forensic Files, to Oxygen Network, and YouTube documentaries. Each program revisited the horror, the hope, the hunt, and finally, the heartbreaking resolution. But what remained long after the last broadcast wasn't the case file. It was the girl behind the headlines. To know Brooke Wilberger was to know light. She was 19, bright, gentle, devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, engaged to be married. She volunteered. She babysat us. She believed in kindness. Those who knew her say she radiated peace. Her smile was quiet, her faith unshakable. She journaled. She prayed. She dreamed of teaching children. And when her life was stolen, those dreams didn't die. They transformed. In 2010, the Wilberger family launched the Brooke Carol Wilberger Scholarship Fund, a legacy born of loss now changing lives across Oregon and beyond. Each year, the scholarship is awarded to young women who embody Brooke's values: faith, academic excellence, and service. It's more than money. It's a message that love endures, that goodness can ripple forward even after tragedy. Every May, the Wilberger family hosts a small private memorial, just close friends and family. No headlines, no microphones, just Brooke. They read scripture, sing hymns, share memories, light candles, and honor the girl who, for a brief time, illuminated everyone around her. Today, Brooke Wilberger's case is studied in law enforcement training academies. Her story is used in university courses on criminal justice, forensics, and victim advocacy. It is a case study in patience, in procedural restraint, and in how a community can come together not just to seek justice, but to stand in unity. Brooke Wilberger is no longer just a name in a cold case. She has become something more, a symbol of strength, hope, and faith. She reminds us that life is fragile, but legacy is eternal. She reminds us that evil exists, but so does resilience. And she reminds us that no matter how dark the road, light always finds a way. Her story does not end here, because Brooke lives on in the lives she touched and the hope she continues to inspire. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to uncover new truths and new crime mysteries.